We talked about these times that we live in, and clearly the transformations that are taking place. What do they look like? I mean, they've been predicted. We can see sometimes, oftentimes when we're in them, that there's change taking place. But if we zoom out from a larger view, what do they really look like? Even the question of, what does evolution look like? And we've talked about that because the physical body is still changing, but it's changing in a way that it's accommodating the bigger shift that's happening in our energy system, where our physical body is giving birth to this energy system and its ever growing complexity and facility, and that it could be, and I think it is, the vehicle that we will transform into, that will be the continuation of what we're experiencing here in our human life. It seems like this is a time of real polarization. I mean, that's like almost an understatement. And it may be very profound right now where I'm living, but I think in many places it's like that. Even though people sometimes talk about unification, what we see is a separation of ideas, of values, of concerns, of beliefs. And very interesting is a polarization of facts. Like interpretation of reality is like so different right now, depending on who you're talking to and what you're listening to. And that's why I think we need very good, discernment skills. And remember that discernment is the evolutionary sense of taste, just like the third eye or the third ear, or clairsentience, feeling at a different distance, that our ability to detect what is more connected to reality and what's being distorted really takes constant exercise of our discernment. And that is connected to our sense of taste. So the separation is like oil and water separating. There's this one part of our planet, of our social construct, that is more aligning all the time to carbonization. And carbon is dense, it's imploding. We can see that there's kind of like a movement toward carbonization. Carbonizing things inhibits natural life process and can interfere with healthy life process. So we have this carbonization. Its density. Carbon is very dense. And in a way, when things become more carbonized and more dense, they start to implode. Whereas another part of this movement, which also includes carbon, but in balance. You'd say this is balance, and this is possibly extreme. This is more like oxygenation. So a lot of the persons that are more seeking balance, connection to the environment, and creating a life that respects the earth, and with a clear understanding that the earth is what creates us in this physical level. So the quality of water, the quality of air, quality of the food that we eat becomes an important thing. And I don't think there's anybody on this live stream or anyone that would listen to something like light body activation that hasn't practiced breathing exercises, that hasn't wanted to oxygenate their body because of the benefit of that. It creates positive attitude, creates better blood circulation, it creates more active metabolism. So all the positive things. Also, it raises frequency. So we can use oxygenation as a way to expand frequencies. This is something that might be helpful to be able to recognize, again, if we're zooming out, like the nature and the quality of the separation that is appearing right now. If you zoom out far enough, there's no separation. However, we're still navigating these strong forces, and we want to be able to process them, and we want to be able to keep on a balanced, even footing, or we say in English, keel. We want an even keel. What's happening on this level is where you have more of the control of economy and the less of, let's say, I guess, like minus equality of resources, of exchange. And here you have more trading, sharing. We're not always that good at these things, but it's something that we strive for. Like, we want to share. We want to be able to find equal value. There's a synchronization of change happening for the ones that are moving themselves into this frequency expansion, into this consciousness awakening. In other words, it's not just like your consciousness awakens and it's like you read a page on a book and that's what you know now. But the consciousness awakening has so many dimensions to it. It's like you know something also, but you see things differently. Your perception has become altered. And as I mentioned earlier, our body chemistry is also changing. I think some of you have noticed that. Your body chemistry is changing. So certain things that you might have been able to take into the body previously, they don't go so well anymore. And it's not just, it's not just not like your condition, but it's also your vibration. That's what I wanted to say. So I just wanted to also bring up about the spiritual birth. There's like a synchronization. And, one thing accelerates, but that triggers another function, and those two together trigger something else. One of the things that has happened is, in the very beginning, it might have just been relaxation. From a Shiatsu treatment, massage treatment, you went to a yoga class, you did breathing exercises, and then you laid down, or even something that I like very much is called autogenic exercise, and you felt yourself now in a way that you were never taught in school, that your parents never showed you. Fortunately, now we're telling our children about it, but we didn't hear about that. And then suddenly we had this experience called relaxation. And then what you might find out is that if you had that experience, there's a whole physiology to that. Well, the mass of society is moving here toward tension. And you could say sympathetic or orthosympathetic. Experience, tension, separation, adrenaline, acidity. Here you have relaxation, and the physiology is regeneration. It's parasympathetic. Perceptually, it creates wholeness of the body, of the mind. I'm not saying all at once, and it doesn't stay there for the rest of your time. You have to, practice it. You have to seek it. But you had that experience at some point. You relaxed and you said, "Oh, what's this? I would like to have more of that." And then you have more of that, and you start to recognize this tension. And so you might say to someone, "Hey, why don't you try some of this?" Parasympathetic. So how can you do that? Well, I just took this Shiatsu class, or massage therapy class, or craniosacral class. Here's some parasympathetic vibration for you. And you notice that when you do the treatment, what's happening? The person breathes deeper, they oxygenate. And so it triggers something for you, for them, and that starts to move outward into the environment, into the structure of the community, into the family. So we could say that maybe the nervous system was the first place that shifted. But you can't really say exactly this started first and this started second because there's so much synergy involved. The breathing, breath. And so then what happens is, either consciously, but usually by default, the chakras start to react. And you may not know that. But it starts reacting. And when those chakras start to accelerate, then they give an influence to the physiology. They give an influence to the breathing. They give an influence to what you're now seeing, insight. The chakras change the emotional function. And the chakras, they're coded, and they have certain information. And then, through different things that I've talked about this many times, the Kundalini, the basic channel of the Kundalini, starts to get triggered. And this can have effects that are great, but for some people, the effects are challenging. And for a lot of people, they don't realize that the Kundalini is reacting, and they start to feel strange, or they start to feel out of sync, or strange or estranged from the people around them. And unfortunately, like I've talked about before, I won't go into it too much, but there's influences from technology, particularly digital technology, that trigger the Kundalini. Also chemicals, excess indulgence in caffeine, something like that. Drugs can give an unwanted movement to the Kundalini. And when I say unwanted, it means that the Kundalini activity accelerates to the point where the rest of the system cannot process that. So it creates an imbalance in a way. And as you know, with the light body activation material, we have always been seeking to work with the Kundalini in a way that it would always stay synchronized with the capacity of the organism, us, around it. And the ability for chakras, nervous system, circulatory system to handle that acceleration of energy and vibration. And also the Kundalini is coded. They all have their code and what they're contributing to physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual growth and awakening. All of those components have those kind of informations besides just physical reaction. Now, happening and much less talked about in any sphere that I've ever been in is the vibration of the energy body. This energy body is developing over thousands of years. It's developing as a system. It's developing as a physiological system, which is an outgrowth of the hormonal, digestive, circulatory, respiratory, nervous system, and then this whole other larger, more expanded, more complex layer starts to develop in this system called the outer body. Now, the outer body also contains components, which is chakra and kundalini, and they're all starting to work in synchronization. First, they might have just a little bit of interchange and a lot of independence, but as they start to vibrate more actively, they start to synchronize and they start to trigger each other. And this whole awareness birth is taking place. Now, when we're born from the womb, of course, we were in the placenta. But this gestation takes place in the atmosphere of the earth, in the atmosphere of our solar system. We develop with the physical body, the emotional body, and the psychological or mental body. And all of that is part of the gestation that's taking place. If we awaken to a certain point, we start to become aware of this outer body and also that it has a semi-permeable quality to it. It can become more permeable, it can be less permeable. And it also has selective permeability. But that selective permeability, for the most part, has to be regulated by the awareness of the person themselves or the group themselves. And that person's awareness then starts to become selective. What vibrations can I allow to come in? And which ones do I filter out? And we can be doing that in the same moment, even with the same situation or person, where we're allowing certain information to come in, but we're recognizing that this is not useful. This is not harmonious or symbiotic. And so I'm going to filter that. I'm not going to let that enter into my vibrational physiology at this moment. It's too disruptive. But these parts, these frequencies, this seems to be something useful. So I will selectively allow that to enter my system.